Hey friend, I'm Laura. Thank you for joining me today. I am so excited to be starting my Week in the Life album. So this is actually my 2019 Week in the Life album. I started it back in 2019, but I'm catching up on editing videos, and then I'm also working on finishing that project because I only made it to the end of Monday when I initially set out to do this project. It overlapped with the beginning of grad school, and I ended up getting so busy for the next 2.5 years doing graduate school that I am just now being able to finish up all of those projects. And this was the first one I tackled. So the video I'm sharing with you today is my intro. I already have a video on my channel that I will link down below, or you can check out the Week in the Life playlist. And that video talks about my plan for my 2019 Week in the Life album, which is this album you're seeing right now. And I also have a video showing you that gorgeous sequin shaker title page and art journaling style intro photograph page that you can see through the transparency with the sequins. So I'm working on the back side of that very front cover today, and I'm doing a long journaling format introduction to my album. So really describing my process for this album, the approach I have for the album, as I talked about in that Week in the Life plan video. Definitely check that out if you haven't already. But I described in there my plan for Week in the Life, and it was very specific the way I was approaching it. I've been asking a lot of questions about my life, my business, my future, what path to take, really seeking a lot of clarity in this season of life. And so when I started this Week in the Life project, I really wanted to use the lens of looking at those questions and seeing if I was finding answers in certain areas and really evaluating my path forward. So this project wasn't just to memory keep for me. It was really about the process. And so journaling became very important for me to do a lot of reflection. And I really wanted to include all of that information on the title page. That way, when I'm old and gray and like 85 years old, I can look back at this album and remember who I was at, oh gosh, how old was I when this was made? 29? Yeah. When I was 29, like really look back and think, who was Laura at 29 and what was going on in her life? What did her week look like? And also, what are these big questions she was asking in her life? I love memory keeping for that reason. And so I really wanted to make sure I included all of that journaling and those important stories and questions that I'm asking throughout this week. I wanted to include that in the album. So the front page was the perfect way to do that, my first page of the album as an introduction before I even dive into the first day of the week. So I'm starting off with mostly Citrus Twist Kit stuff from back in 2019. I no longer subscribe to them, but this was a kit that I had recently gotten when I set out to make this album, and there were a lot of pinks in it. I also created a kit to make this album, and I really loved that kit that I put together from my stash. And you can see I picked out a notebook style 6x8 paper. I cut it down a little bit. I thought that would be perfect to do all of my journaling on. So that's the pattern paper I'm choosing, but I really wanted to create some layers behind that. So I go through the different ephemera and I go through the different pattern papers that were in that kit. And I end up deciding none of them really worked perfectly. None of the papers worked perfectly to match that notebook style paper. So what I ended up doing was grabbing some pink parchment paper from my stash, and I thought that worked out great. That pink parchment paper was something I picked up when I was in the Philippines on a trip back in January of 2019. And so it's not something I've ever seen in craft stores stateside, but I thought it was really great. So I really like how that looked. It ended up being the perfect warm tone pink. And as you'll see me flipping through all this different ephemera that I'm putting down and all the papers I'm considering, I keep flipping to that front page of the album to look at the warm tones of that pink and decide if what I'm making really goes well with that color that's on the front side of that intro page. So I thought that parchment paper I ended up choosing was a perfectly warm tone pink to pull that theme into the album. And now I'm piling up some different ephemera that came in that kit, and I loved this little tag. I end up putting some gorgeous gold twine on it, and that gold twine has some gold sequins that are threaded through it. And I thought it was so beautiful, but I really wanted that the twine to be long. That way it actually showed off, the gold color and the shiny sequins on it. And I thought it would be so much fun to have that metallic element on the page. And if I had kept that tag up in the left-hand corner of the page like I had originally planned, I would have had to cut that off, all of that gorgeous gold. So I ended up moving that tag down by this flower element that I glued down onto the page. And I think that really shows it off a lot better. And now I'm just working through different ephemera, cutting up some little bits and gluing them down behind my paper cluster there, and gluing them down as another layer in my mat to this notebook style paper that I'm going to be journaling on. And then I go a little crazy with the stamps. I'm really into stamps lately. I started getting into them in like 2018 and have been increasingly more into them. And as you can see on this page, I really went all out with the stamps. I put them in several different spots, and I think they add like a bold black and white element that I love. It carries over the bold black from my Week in the Life title on the sequin cover page. And it also carries over that black ink art journaling style that I had underneath of my cover sequin page. I had a couple of pictures of me and my husband. Well, now husband. He was my boyfriend back when I made this album. But I have those pictures, and on that page, I journaled just a tiny bit, like the date with black ink. And then I also doodled some black ink hearts all around the backside of the page I'm working on right now. So these black stamps really continue that theme, that art journal feel theme for me, and that bold black elements theme for me. And I messed up on my journaling. You can see I've been working on my journaling here. And unfortunately, sometimes you just mess up. And this was back before I knew about whiteout ink runners, like whiteout tape runners, essentially, where you can just easily put the whiteout on your page and it's very flat and not goopy or clumpy or any of that nonsense. I love that tool, but I didn't have it back when I was making this page. So my solution to messing up on my journaling was to cut out a tag and glue that down over my messed up word, and then to add some stamping on top of that tag. And I love the way that that ended up turning out. It looks like it was always meant to be a part of the page, in my opinion. So you can't even tell that it was covering up a mistake. And I loved the way that invited me to add even more stamping and black elements to the page. As a final touch, when I finish my journaling, I decided I needed one more black stamp to bring in all of that black ink a little bit further down the page and on the left-hand side. So I added that word best, and now I think it looks like the black ink stamps are perfectly distributed throughout the page, and I really like how that turned out. So here's what my page looks like. I hope you have enjoyed hearing about this process and how I'm approaching Week in the Life this year and why journaling is such an important part of that for me. I hope you will follow along with my channel and look forward to the rest of this album. I am so excited to share those videos coming very, very soon because I just finished up the album and there's so many gorgeous bits to share with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!